Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode. Yes, you heard that right. It is the very first episode of The Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. I'm Suzy.
And I'm Michael, and we're excited you joined us for this adventure.
Yeah, Michael and I have been cultivating, meditating, whatever word you want to use on a podcast for a while now. So we are so excited that we finally started one. We just decided this is what we need to do. We want listeners to hear about other people's impacts in the world, and we're just super happy you're here. And so who are we, right? You're like, okay, she gonna start here soon. But so I'm Suzy Sevier, and a little bit about myself is you know born and partly raised in California, then moved to Iowa, got my undergrad degree in anthropology and communication studies. And from there, I was like, okay, I really love what I learned in school, but what job am I going to get? Lo and behold, I got into the world of accounting. And for those who don't know me, which is many of you, I'm just not the type of person who fits in that really great accounting role. And so from there, I just knew I wanted more, that my life, there was more for me that I had to do, right? I just knew that there was more. And so from there, I was like, okay, what do I do from here? And I first decided that I was going to have to move because also me in Iowa was just not the greatest fit. I just wanted more for my life. I wanted to be able to see more even of the US. So I moved to Colorado. And within that move to Colorado, I got my MBA at the University of Denver, which I truly, truly, truly loved. Like, I loved the people that I met. And from that, I got into supply chain. And what that did for me really was that I could finally see a lot of things full circle, right? I could see them from the very beginning, like to what it is as a raw material to what it is at the end product. And that made me think about everything differently, right? Because, like, the world in itself is supply chain, right? Like, we start with a seed and then we end up with a vegetable. So it truly fascinated me. And from there, I was lucky enough to meet the very handsome Michael Barnhart. And we actually met at a TEDx event. And what that did for us, it changed everything, and the theme was reset. And from there, we really took that theme to heart in everything that we wanted to do. Like, we were going to reset the way we thought about the world, the way we thought about our relationships, the way we thought about the jobs we were in, the way we thought about how we treated people. And it really did change everything for us moving forward. But I'm going to stop there for now, and I'm going to let Michael give us a little bit about himself.
Hey, everybody, Michael Barnhart. So, for everybody who doesn't know me, I have been in the military now for 16 years. I got in the military, let's see, I graduated high school in 2004, tried to, go to school, working full time and going to school full time just wasn't cutting it for me. And so I was like, man, there's got to be an easier way. And so what I ended up doing was enlisting in the Air Force. And I enlisted in the Air Force, and I was an aircraft mechanic on C-17s. So I spent some time, of course, basic training in the Air Forces in San Antonio. So did that, and I went to Biloxi, Mississippi after that at Keesler Air Force Base, and then went up to Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas, shortly after that. And then I ended up at Charleston Air Force Base in South Carolina. And I spent quite a bit of time there as well. And so during that whole thing, I really found that this like fire lit inside of me. And I don't know if it was like the basic military training or what, but that whatever that was, it like lit a fire in me, like, hey, to be the best at everything that I did, right? And so that was something that I really strived for. And so, doing that, I did impress some commanders, and they gave me a recommendation to go to the Air Force Academy, where I ended up at the Air Force Academy. Spent 4 years at the Air Force Academy, got my commission in the Air Force now. So I went from enlisted to officer. Right after that, went and got my master's degree in molecular biology and in virology, surprisingly enough. And I was going to be a biologist for the Air Force, right? And then the biologist career field sent me to get a master's degree to specialize in virology, right, for the Air Force. Um, Lo and behold, long story short, there was no need for a biologist in the Air Force anymore, and they got rid of that career field altogether, right? So I found out at the time of graduation from a master's degree that, hey, you're actually going to be a program manager now for the Air Force. I was like, awesome. I have no idea what that means. You're going to be in acquisitions. I was like, yep, still don't know what that means either. Cool, and so I wanted to be a biologist, and that was like really my dream, but ended up all working out. I went and did and spent quite a bit of time being basically a program manager, project manager, whatever you want to call it, on chemical and biological defense systems for the Air Force, where I got a significant amount of training in program management, which ended up being very, very beneficial for my entrepreneurial career. So after that, I spent a lot of time. I spent, over a year in Afghanistan, and after that, paying my dues and things like that. I ended up getting my dream job through the Air Force, which was actually teaching at the Air Force Academy. Didn't know how much I would love it until I got there, and I really have never had a job like that before, where I felt so fulfilled. Like I worked long hours, but it didn't feel like I was working at all. And I just loved it, right? Everybody else around me was getting burnt out. And they're like, how do you keep working? And I'm like, when you actually love something so much, and it's so fulfilling for you, it doesn't matter, right? Like work, it doesn't become work, right? Because your life and your work is intertwined, right? So again, long story short, how we ended up in Cambridge, England now is I was teaching at Air Force Academy. They want me to continue teaching, so they sent me to get a PhD. And so that's why I'm here at the University of Cambridge getting a PhD in biochemistry. We'll be here for about a year and a half more. And then so currently it is May of 2021. And so we'll be here for a couple more years maybe, and I'll head back to the Air Force Academy. We'll head back to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, and I'll continue teaching and finish out my military career there. So I've been in the military since 2005, and yeah, I have about 7 years left. And our goal is to leverage real estate now and be as active as possible. So then when I retire, we can fully retire and we can be as active or as passive as possible in multifamily real estate as we want.
Yeah. And, now that we are here, because I wanted to make sure that Michael introduced the fact that we were all the way in the UK. I am a program manager for a biotech company here in supply chain. So it does all come full circle. And I am really happy to be here. And I think the best thing about this move and the easiest part, and something that I forgot to mention before, was my first year of my undergraduate degree. I actually went to Hawaii Pacific University. So being able to move a long distance was actually something that came very easy. So when Michael had originally said, like, hey, I'm getting my PhD at the University of Cambridge, like, let's go, I was like, woo, I'm joining this ride and I really can't wait. But to move into like how we really got started in real estate, because I'm sure plenty of you are wondering, like, well, did they start before they moved to the UK? Like, how does this all come full circle? But we didn't. So Michael had, I guess, dabbled in real estate a little bit. I had none. I had thought that super rich people owned apartment buildings. Essentially, that was my idea of real estate. But when COVID happened and all the lockdowns occurred, we were in lockdown for a little over 100 days. And so Michael was completely home from the lab, like everybody in the country. They were like, do not go to work. So if you were to have worked at a place where you needed to be at work, you just had time off. And Michael did work. He wrote his first year report, so it wasn't just like a free for all. But during that time, we were like, okay, well, what are we going to do, right? Because we choose not to have a TV due to the distractions. And we were like, okay, well, let's start a mini book club. And so the first book that we decided to do it with was The Slight Edge. And I'm actually going to let Michael tell the original story of how The Slight Edge even came into his life.
Yeah, that's a great story, Suzy. Thanks for teeing that up for me. So actually, when I was in Afghanistan, so when I was over there, I had very amazing leaders, right, that I met over there, and several incredible leaders that I'm still friends with today, and I still keep in touch with. So I was, working over there for over a year, And one of the leaders who like rotated in, so being over there for over a year, you see many people come and go because most of the deployments are for like 3 or 4 months, and then people just kind of rotate in and out, right? So it's a revolving door every 3 or 4 months, and so you get to meet and see a lot of people while I stay stationary, right? Everybody comes and goes, and I'm just staying there. Anyways, one of the deputy commanders that I worked for, he gave me this book for Christmas in 2016. And so it's called The Slight Edge. And he's like, Michael, you have to read this book. Like, it's going to change your life. And I was like, okay. I was actually reading quite a bit then. I was plowing through like 3 or 4 books a month. But I had already had a list of books that I wanted to read because I was going to the Air Force Academy to teach after my tour in Afghanistan. So I was trying to get through all these textbooks because I wanted to make sure that I was going to be the best instructor that I could be at the Air Force Academy right before I showed up. And so I kind of tossed the Slight Edge off to the side, and I was like, I'll get to this when I get to it. It's just not on my list right now. And so fast forward to COVID, 2020, 4 years later, almost 4 years from the time I got the book.
So yeah, like Michael said, our first book was The Slight Edge. And what it really talks about was like doing 1% like more every day, like no matter what that is, right? Just like if you can read that extra page, if you can do that extra, workout, if you can meditate a little bit longer or even take something away, right? Just like eat 1% healthier because you're eating less junk food, whatever that may be, turn the TV off earlier. And then towards the back of the book, it actually suggests like the author puts his reading list at the end. And one of the books that was back there was Multiple Streams of Income. And that book, I don't know, like 4 or 5 chapters. And I think it talks about real estate investing. And Michael had just looked at me and he's like, we have got to do this. And I just said, okay, because we're both we're very connected to one each other. So it's not like we would ever put each other in a situation where there would be like huge danger or risk. Like we know each other really well. So it was like, okay, well, if Michael thinks we can do this, we can definitely do this. This isn't something that we were going to do separately. We knew we were going to do it together. And that's just because of like who we are as a couple, right? Like our hobbies align really well, like our eating habits, our actions, so we just knew that this was something that we were going to do together. And the greatest part was that like we were going to be able to build something together, right? Because before I was in my job, he's in his job, but then you just come home and then home is your time together. And it was like, cool, this is an opportunity where we can grow and take control of something and have it be ours, like in just ours. And so that was really a main driver behind it as well. But I mean, how we dove in was education, education, education. We started listening to podcasts. Michael started buying a lot of books. We searched every library possible, online library to be exact. And like just so that we could consume as much as we could because we had so many blind spots that we didn't know what was out there. And so we just wanted to keep getting as much information as we could. Initially, we had gone to a conference, and in that conference, it is the Veterans REI. It was held by Bill Allen. Somebody just had referred us to it because Michael decided one day to make a post. And through that post, we met somebody else who was also in the UK and investing overseas. And his name is Marcus Long. And Marcus was like, hey, you should definitely go to this event. And we were like, okay, let's do it. It's virtual. Why not? And so through that, we learned a lot of different methods for real estate. And the BRRRR method and multifamily were the two that stood out. But because Michael and I were so new, we were like, okay, let's just try the BRRRR method. And for those who don't know, the BRRRR method stands for
buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and then repeat.
Thank you.
Right. So it's a way to like buy properties at a discount, rehab them, refi them, and then you basically have built-in equity. And then you have a cash flowing property if you do it right. And so Suzy and I thought, hey, this single family thing, this is an awesome method that we could build a lot of equity, and we can do it ourselves, and because we don't really know too much about real estate yet. So we can do this and we can learn along the way. So our 5-year goal from that point was to buy actually 25 of these single family homes, right, in 5 years. And then we were going to sell all of them and 1031 them into a larger multifamily. So multifamily was always on the list as like a 5-year goal, stretch goal. And it was just like mine, because it was like, you think about multifamily, you think about single family, you think about multifamily, and it's just like, oh man, I can't get into multifamily yet. But during that Veterans REI conference that Suzy had mentioned, we actually had like a one-on-one conversation with Whitney Sewell from LifeBridge Capital, and he planted a seed because he's a veteran, and he's also a police officer as well. And so he planted a seed in our head, like seeing the pictures with him and his partner Russ, like in front of these like apartment complexes that they bought. And I was like, man, that is awesome. I was like, I don't know how to do that, but one day we're going to do that and it's going to be awesome. And it's just a very powerful tool where you can like scale really quickly. Anyways, he had mentioned you don't have to start with multifamily or a single family. You can start directly with multifamily. So it planted a seed in my head, right? Um, so that seed's sitting there. It just needed a little water and a little attention. But then, so we continue to focus on this single family route. And
yeah, and we set up a team in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And so we had interviewed property managers, we had interviewed realtors, contractors. We had a whole entire team set up, and we actually had 2 properties under contract. And, a risk happened that was just not in our profile. And an inland hurricane went through the city, which was devastating. So the city lost 60% of the trees. Some people didn't have power for 4 to 5 weeks. Some people didn't have power for longer. And what that did was that we lost our financing, and we lost our financing because we couldn't get contractor bids, because contractors were like, we need to go out and rebuild the city. And we're like, no, it's totally understandable. Like, this was completely horrible what happened. But Michael and I had to take a step back and ask each other, like, well, what do we do now? Because our property manager thinks that it's going to take over a year to rebuild the city. So we can't just wait a year, right? Because so much can happen in a year, and we are already ready to start real estate investing. And so what we did was we looked at our goals, and part of our 5-year goal plan was to have 25 single family homes. We were going to sell them all and then 1031 into a multifamily property. And just what that does is that then you don't pay the capital gains tax on the profits from the property. But we were like, okay, well, we're just going to go straight into multifamily, right? Because now if we wait, we're going to be a year behind, and who knows what'll happen. So multifamily it was. And what we did was that Michael found like our very first meetup, and I don't even know how many days it took him to find it. I'm going to have to think like maybe an hour within our decision. But that was with Brian Briscoe, and he hosts a meetup on Friday afternoons. And that was just the first one, and from there, everybody shares so much information. People are like, hey, go to this meetup. Hey, you should attend these conferences. Hey, this is somebody you should talk to. So like our knowledge base again just kept growing and growing and growing, because we found out about more meetups. We found out about more people to talk to. We were getting introductions. A lot of people want to have those one-on-one calls with you because they want you to succeed. And the biggest thing for us was the consistency, because initially a lot of people, we say like, hey, we're in the UK, and it's like, what, why, who, what, when, where, why. And when we were showing up every week and we were showing up to the conferences, people finally understood like, oh, okay, no, they're definitely in this for the long game. Like, we need to like all chat together about it. And so it was just accumulation of everything that got us into multifamily. But a couple of the conferences that really like stuck out to us, one was by Adam Adams, and what they said in the conference was that you need to have an identity shift, because everybody knows, like me, Suzy, as being in business, and everyone knows Michael as, like scientist and Air Force. Nobody knows you two as real estate investors. Like, something has to change. And right then, like that light bulb went off, and it was like, okay, we need to start posting more blog content. Like, because we at that point had a website up and we were ready to go, but we needed to pivot, and we needed to write blog content weekly. We needed to show people that we were knowledgeable and continuing to educate ourselves in the space. And through doing all of that, one of Michael's old classmates from the Air Force Academy reached out to him and was like, hey, I'm wanting to get into multifamily as well. Like, we should chat.
that was amazing because Yeah, he had left the Air Force and went in real estate full time. And so, we're chatting, whatever. We had a call, and long story short, he was interested in getting into multifamily, and that's kind of what we were looking to do as well. Um, and and I was like, all right, cool, we can do this. Like Susie and I can do the broker relations, the acquisition side of things, and Susie can focus on the marketing piece and the investor relations and things like that. And so we just need somebody on the ground to basically touch and feel the asset and like have eyes on, right? Just so happens that our partner is in an area that we were actually interested in investing in, and it was Oklahoma City. That's where he lives, and then we're also interested in Tulsa. So a lot of great things happening in these two markets. And one of the things too is that we really want to focus on is cash flow, right? We like cash flowing assets from day one, especially with the current economic situation right now. We don't know what's going to happen. And so if all else fails, if appreciation, the market crashes, things like that, at least we have at the end a cash flowing asset that's paying out dividends, right? So that was our whole goal. And we knew like the Midwest and the Southeast, whatever bucket you want to put Oklahoma into, we knew it was a solid cash flow market. The cap rate's a little bit higher, not a lot of competition there. And so we were really excited to move and look at properties in that area.
Yeah. And even, going off of there, like, because I'm just going to go back to the conferences that really changed things as well. A lot of people in the conferences were saying, like, people need to know, like, and trust you. People need to, like, understand your story and why you're into real estate, And that's actually something that we will touch on in the next episode. But when we were talking to other people in the space, like we were very open, like, this is why we are investing in real estate. And the amount of people that you can touch is just so much higher than in single family homes. And that was one of the biggest things for us, right? Because we truly do want to make a difference. But after we were attending these conferences and finding out that we weren't going to have like our friends and family be the ones that were going to invest with us, we literally put on like a jetpack and went from 0 to 100 pretty quick. So we were doing like 20 to 25 investor calls a week, just because once we had figured out our why, we knew that in order to accelerate like our growth quickly, we needed to be talking to more people. And we knew that we were going to do whatever it takes, because it is really important. And even like a little piece of this is that like we have a timeline that we want to get this completed by. And in order to do what we had to do, we knew that we were going to have the late nights and the early mornings. And I mean, that even all goes into mindset, right? Because when you wake up knowing your purpose, like it is so much easier to get into work right away. And I mean, like mindset was a huge thing for us, even at the very beginning, right? When Michael looked at me and said like we should get into real estate, I could have easily said no, and that could have been a limiting belief. But I knew deep in my heart that that was not going to be a limiting belief for us, that this was definitely something that we were going to get into. And I actually think the biggest mindset shift for me was that I no longer had to tie W-2 to my identity. And for a lot of people listening, like if you truly think about it, that's what you do. And I mean, even initially when we moved over here, I had applied to over 50 jobs. And granted, I know I'm in a different country, like the visa laws are very different, but it was pretty devastating to be like, why don't any of these people want me, right? Because you do take it personally. And I just learned right away that nothing about it is personal, but once you detach that W-2 from your identity, everything gets easier. Like the way you think about your career, the way you think about what you want to do in the world, it just changed everything. And those were two of the biggest like mindset things for me. I knew that deep down, if Michael and I if we just put everything in place as well as we could, then we knew we could succeed over here, because that is what we want to do. We want to be able to show people that long distance investing is very attainable for everybody. You just have to make sure you have everything in place and you truly, truly think about everything before you dive in.
Yeah, absolutely, Susie. So one of the biggest things for us, like Susie kind of alluded to a little bit, was that our end goal is to be able to do this from anywhere in the world, right? So we are helping or showing our investors and showing people that we can actually be successful in syndicating assets from anywhere in the world, right? We have the right teams in place, and we have the right systems and the right processes nailed down, and we can do it kind of from anywhere, and that's the ultimate goal.
But we want to make sure that we show other investors that that's attainable as well, because a lot of people want to invest long distance and they don't just because of that. But I mean, putting yourself out there, and like, even though you're uncomfortable, we were uncomfortable on the meetup calls and we were uncomfortable in the conferences talking a few times, but it's just getting over that feeling, because the more you do it, the easier it gets. And that's where the consistency comes in as well, because when you see the same people every week, it gets so much easier. And even the fact that you're in your home, like, you already take off a layer of stress, right? Because when you go to a networking event, it's very easy for somebody just to go to the back of the room and stand there and not talk to anybody. But when you're thrown into a breakout room in Zoom or in any of the conferences, like, somebody right away just says, like, hey, Suzy, why don't you introduce yourself? Hey, Michael, where are you from? And it's so much easier to get into that groove. And especially because you're practicing, because you're there all of the time, it really changes everything.
Yeah, so to talk about mindset going from single family to multifamily as well, like, I know it is a huge shift for a lot of people, right? There's partners involved, there's vendors involved, there's third party property management companies that you have to manage and lead, right? And so there's all these other things that come with multifamily that aren't with single family. Um, but initially we were like, oh, well, if we can do single family, we could probably do 10 to 25 units, right? And I think initially when we were beginning, we started looking in that range. I was like, hey, we just get 10 to 20 unit, 25 unit or something like that under our belt, and then we can scale after that. Well, come to find out, I'm underwriting everything I can get my hands on, right? And actually, the first property we ever submitted an LOI on was 126 units, and that was the first property. Was I terrified? Absolutely. When I was literally scared to hit send when I signed my name to an LOI that was over $7 million, right? Like, I have never offered that much money on a property before. And just doing that, yes, I stepped outside of my comfort zone and everything like that. But we had a mentor, who was guiding us along the way, right? He was our sounding board. We could, bounce everything off of him, make sure that we were good to go. And that really expanded my mindset, at least at that point. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, we're never going to look at a 10 or 20 unit anymore. We're going big. Let's go 100 unit. And it makes more sense because we can have on-site property management and maintenance. And that's great for us being asset managers from 4,000 miles away. We have somebody there, 5 days a week executing the business plan that we said we were going to execute to our investors.
No, absolutely. And something that we also made sure to do, which made it easier, that within our team, we delegated roles. And we didn't just delegate roles within the team, we definitely delegated them between Michael and myself, just because we never wanted to be in a position where we were both doing the same thing at the same time. Because you hear people say, no matter where they are in their career or even not in real estate, like, I wish I had more time. So Michael and I made sure to optimize the time that we had. So like Michael said earlier, he was doing the acquisitions and the broker relations, and I was doing the investor relations and the marketing, just so that we could make sure that we had everything covered and we were creating this great balance within our company. But something that we knew that we needed to add to our company was this podcast. And so we are so happy, like we said at the beginning, that you are here to follow us along in this journey. And so we want to go in to tell you a little bit more about the adventures of a real estate investor. So something that Michael and I think is huge is the impacts that people are making while leveraging real estate investing. Like, you are going to be amazed by these episodes to be able to hear and find out how people are impacting themselves, their family, like their community, and even communities in different countries. It is completely, I mean, some of the stories give me shivers, like they give me goosebumps. I love hearing that people are not just using real estate investing like to have more money. They're using money for good, because that's a huge thing that's missing, right? Like a lot of people think money is evil because we don't talk about it within our society. But like when you use money as a tool and you use it for good, it can create a ripple effect, with impact investing. And so, it's not just about the profits, it's about the people, it's about the planet, it's about it all. Like we care about everyone in between and everyone who is involved.
Absolutely. And so not only like are these people making impacts, you know, in their families and things like that, but like Susie and I have been focusing really on making impacts in the communities that we acquire, right? We're acquiring apartment communities, and these are places where people live, right? These are sacred places. And we want to make sure that every time that we underwrite a property, every time we develop a business plan for a specific property, that we take a step back and we say, how are we impacting the residents there now? What are we doing that's making their lives better? Because we want, I mean, that just gives me chills right there. Like being able to bring in some outside money and really renovate this property, make it amazing, right? To make the quality of life for the residents so much better that they want to stay, right? And that's what really excites me about impact investing.
Yeah. And with our podcast, there is no flow. Like we introduce the speaker, we have them say like stuff about their background, they introduce themselves, and then we just kind of talk. And that's really where like these amazing conversations happen, and where we truly find out about people's whys as well, and how real estate helps them get to that place. Like the only thing that is 100% consistent with our podcast is that we ask the adventurous four. And it is the 4 exploratory questions that we ask every guest. And actually, Michael and I have never done this. So we thought it would be fun if we asked each other the questions, because I'd want to
Why
know.
not?
Yeah, I want to know about Michael. So I'm going to start with asking Michael the 4 questions. So the first one is, where is one place you wish to travel to and why?
So Susie and I are divers. I'm a huge diver. I have my rescue diving certification. I eventually want to become a dive master, and that's what I want to do once I retire, because it takes like 6 to 8 weeks, whatever, to do it. Anyways, long story short, um, the one place I like to travel would be the Maldives. Right? There's something about crystal clear water and having a bungalow over the water with a glass floor. You can see the sea creatures, as you're walking around the little bungalow, whatever, and also having like a private little pool and things like that. Like that just sounds amazing to me. Like completely unplugged from technology. I mean, we already don't have a television to distract us, but completely unplugged from everything and just be there. And then also, of course, dive. So that's where I would want to go.
No, I love it.
Where would you like to go and why, Susie?
So my number place that I want to go is to northern Vietnam. Like I want to see all of the green rolling hills. I want to see all the limestone cliffs. I want to go diving there. I've been to southern Vietnam and I really just enjoyed the culture, but I want to get a little bit out of the hustle and bustle. And that's why I want to go up to northern Vietnam, because it looks so peaceful. And I mean, granted, that's in a photo, but I know that deep down, like that's just a place that I cannot wait to explore.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the second question is, what is the number one thing on your bucket list and how are you leveraging real estate investing to achieve it?
Man, that's a good question. I have several things on my bucket list, of course. But the number one thing I think on my bucket list is building generational wealth. And here's why. I grew up poor, living paycheck to paycheck, right? Like my mom was always clipping coupons, and we were lucky if we got 3 meals a day. So it was difficult, right? And I saw that, and I see that now, right? My mom worked until she was well into her 70s, I think 78 or 76, because she couldn't afford to retire, right? And my dad worked until he literally could not work anymore, like he could not walk. Um, I do not want that for myself. I don't want that for my family and potentially my future kids, right? I don't want to show them that that's how you live life. That being said, I know my parents are at a place right now where they, you know, I want to be able to take care of them. And I want to build generational wealth. I want to build enough wealth that I can take care of my parents when they need me to take care of them. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then for me, so there are two, but I'm going to save one because it has to do with our why. Like something that's big for Michael and I is like we have a hashtag for each other and it's Road to 100 Countries. And the reason I choose this one is because the world to me is a miracle and it is beautiful. And there's so much culture, there's so much diversity. And I want to dive into all of it. I want to explore the deepest parts of every continent that there is. I mean, I would love to explore every country if possible, just because then I can truly figure out like who I can best serve, right? Because a huge thing for me is being able to serve beyond my four walls. And so to be able to do that would just be amazing. And the way I leverage real estate with doing that is because when you build this, I guess, wealth and you can then have passive income because our whole goal is to go from active to passive. The passive is what will fund me while I'm going out and doing all these exploring and serving all of the other people.
Love it.
Thanks. And then the third question is, what is one piece of advice for someone who wants to start passively investing in real estate?
With a piece of advice that I would give somebody who's wanting to passively invest in real estate is really vet the sponsorship team, right? And understand their why and see if their why aligns with your why, right? Don't just invest in a deal that looks good on paper, right? That looks good with number wise and things like that. Make sure that you're betting on the jockey, not on the horse. What about you?
Yeah, for me, it kind of goes along with that, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper. So with your why, make sure that it is a like a passion and a purpose and not a goal. Because once you get to that and you have like accomplished it, you'll then be lost all over again. So just make sure that if just make sure you truly think about it. You know, it's not something that we came up with in 5 minutes or a day. Like there are some times where I still think on my why, you know, there are many journeys to it. There are many deep thinking points. And so just really dig deep to think like what your life's work is and why you were brought, you know, into this world, because we were all born to make an impact. And then the fourth and final question is, if you had unlimited resources available to you, how would you leave an impact? But Michael and I are going to answer that in the next episode because this one goes deep and it's definitely tied to our why. So you're going to have to stay tuned and go to the next one to find out our answers.
Yeah, so like Suzy says, check out the next episode. We're going to dive into our why. We're going to dive into what we would do if we had unlimited resources available to us and how we would leave an impact.
So there is more to Michael and I than just this podcast. You know, the Adventures of a Real Estate Investor podcast was born because Michael and I's company is adventurous real estate investors, and it really embodies who we are as people. You know, like we love going on adventures, we love being outside, we love just anything that has to do with us being active. And we strongly believe that in the US right now, there's a problem where you're supposed to retire when you're 65, and then that's where you're supposed to live your fullest life. And we just want to show that like your fullest life is meant to be lived the whole entire time that you're alive, not just at the age of 65. And so if you want to learn more about us, head over to our website, and that is adventurousrei.com. And there we have two separate downloads. There's one for the active investor and one for the passive investor. And I will let Michael tell you more about those two.
Yeah, so if you're an active real estate investor and you're interested in downloading a checklist that we put together, it's a 215-point multifamily acquisition checklist where we go through every single detail, since we are very detailed, process-oriented people, every single detail from pre-LOI all the way through closing and take over the property. you can go download that checklist at adventurousrei.com/checklist. And if you're a passive investor or interested in learning how to invest in real estate or leverage real estate from anywhere in the world to attain passive income, you can go check out our guide to creating passive income from anywhere in the world. And that is at venturousrei.com/guide.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being here with us. We are super excited and we can't wait for you to listen to the next episode. So until next time,
Explore more, adventure awaits.
woo!